Hello and welcome to the Hank Cisco Show. My name's Stan Husky. I'm filling in for Hank while he's a little under the weather. Get well soon, Hank. We want you back here. I know I want you back here, that's for sure. We have an interesting show today. We have Mr. Greg Scott on with us. He's a local district justice here in Norristown. And Greg, I have to go back to, saying one of those things like I remember when you were this tall, because I do remember years ago, I think the first time I met you, you were a student representative on council?
Yeah, that was, wow, 14 years ago. That
was 14 years ago. So we've known each other for a pretty good while. Recently, though, or I guess now, you said something off camera that kind of interested you. You've been a district justice now for 4 years?
Yeah, so I've been a district judge. We're no longer justices. Justices are only held for members of the Supreme Court, the highest court of the land. So all the rest of the judges below the pyramid, below the Supremes, are all judges now.
When did that happen? I didn't know that.
A few years ago. Justices wanted to keep that exclusive title to themselves, so they created a rule that everyone that's not a Supreme Court justice is a judge.
I did not know. See, I learned something new. We're a minute into the show. I already learned something new.
A minute in. And before we continue, I just wanted to definitely say big shout out to Hank Cisco. I had a chance to go visit him the other day. It's amazing that 95 years old, he's still bobbing and weaving and hiding. We can't wait for him to come back.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm sure the audience will appreciate when he comes back as well. So
he FaceTimed me the other day.
At 95, I know. 95, he's FaceTiming. Right. So I didn't know about the justice thing. That's interesting, very interesting. There's a big difference, obviously, between a Supreme Court justice, that jump for life, and local district judges. You hear your day in, day out, car thefts? What kind of cases do you hear?
Absolutely. So we are the court of initial jurisdiction. So anyone that enters the justice system or enters the court system, 9 times out of 10, their process starts with the district court. So, for example, in criminal proceedings, once you get arrested, within 24 to 48 hours in Montgomery County, you're going to see a district judge who's going to read you your rights, explain to you your charges, explain to you your next court date, and then after that you'll have your preliminary hearing in front of the district judge if it's a criminal case where they'll have a hearing about your charges, make sure that the Commonwealth has enough prima facie and probable cause to stop you or effectuate that arrest. Then on the civil side, we also handle things, civil claims up to $12,000. What that really looks like is if you're in a car accident and you hit a telephone pole or an electric pole, PICO's going to sue you to recoup the cost that it replaces that pole. On an average, it's about $4,500. Those claims come in there. If you have a small civil claim court, like a contractor who doesn't complete the work, generally those are held there. We also handle landlord-tenant matters. So if you don't pay your rent on time and the landlord wants to evict you, before you have to legally get out of your house, you have to see a district judge. So your landlord cannot and should not tell you, oh, you've got to leave, I'm evicting you. No, only a judge can evict you in the state of Pennsylvania. So those are the general cases that we hear. And I also have truancy cases for the Norristown School District. So if you don't go to school, you would come see me.
Well, so a little bit of my background, as you know, is I was a cop reporter for the Times-Herald locally. I went to a lot of district judges. They were district justices then, offices, and heard a lot of, let's say, more exciting cases maybe, or more certainly some hardcore cases that we probably don't want to get into here. But tell us about maybe some of the more interesting cases that obviously without naming any names, or what are some of the issues that come up that you would never have expected to hear in your courtroom?
Great question. Every day that I come to work, I am surprised but also very humbled by the fact that life happens to people. And I'm in a very unique position to make sure that, one, they're held accountable, but they're held accountable at the level that's appropriate. to the context of the situation, but also appropriate to the offense. We have amazing discretion that I don't take for granted in helping people. And every day that I come to work, I get a chance to help the defendants that are in front of me or the people that are in front of me, and that impact is immediate. It's not long-term. So when I worked in the legislature for 6 years in the Congress in Washington, you create policy, and it takes time for that policy to work its way through the House. Then you got to get it through the Senate. Then the president's got to sign it, and then it really won't really be meaningful for a few years, the impact. Every day that I come to work, my decisions have an immediate impact on the lives that are in front of me. And so I'm really humbled by that fact. For example, you have a landlord-tenant claim. It's like, oh, why didn't you pay the landlord your rent? It doesn't make sense. You know you got to pay rent every day. Well, you'd be surprised at the amount of the working poor that we have in our own backyard, in our community. Your child gets sick with this rare illness, and you've got to be out of work for 2 weeks. That's 2 weeks. That 2 week money that you would have had coming in is going to go pay your rent. Are you going to pay electric? You're going to pay hospital bills? Or are you going to pay your rent? Right? So life happens to people, and I'm constantly juggling that every day.
Right, right. So we were talking about just some of the more interesting cases. So what is something that you found that, like I said, that maybe you wouldn't expect to come before you?
So in terms of an interesting case that I never thought of, you know, I'm really hard-pressed to think of something that is out of the ordinary that's not gross. But I can't think of...
Well, we can come back to that. Maybe it's something that'll hit you and you can come back to it. Again, I think I started the show talking about I've known you since you were this tall and everything. This has been a great learning experience for you. What are some of the takeaways? You said that every day you can make an impact, and that's certainly very important and I'm sure very rewarding for you as a person. What are some of the things you've learned, though? What's some of the takeaways for you as a judge here in Montgomery County?
Yeah, so I think the other thing that I learned, other than that life happens to folks, is that people are so resilient. When you're dealing with children that are faced with adversity, whether it be child abuse, neglect, or women or men with domestic violence, people in the moment of vulnerability think that the world is ending, the world is crashing, and don't really know their resilience. So being able to help victims and even defendants with their second chances has been very rewarding. So learning the resiliency with people that there is really no ending, that the world is your oyster. You can accomplish anything at any point in your life. It's a matter of your free will and your mental stability. So that has been very, very helpful and rewarding to me, being able to help people understand their aptitude and understand that there's life after the courtroom, there's life after the courtroom or situation, whether you're the defendant or the victim, has been very helpful.
So I guess that people can bend a lot before they actually break.
Yeah, absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. And so that has been very rewarding. I think the other thing that I've learned is just how much outside forces play a role in terms of the people that come in my courtroom, whether it be drug abuse or drug addiction, whether it be mental illness, and we're increasingly seeing our mentally ill getting incarcerated in Montgomery County at an alarming rate. And so the system is trying to bend to really figure out how that works, but we really can't do it without all the key stakeholders involved in that process. So legislators, the executive branch, the governor, and try and get all those people in a room to really impact and make meaningful change so that we can fix systems. Can be a little challenging at times, but in Montgomery County, I think we're doing a really good job at trying to get ahead of this issue. And
we talked a little bit about that off camera, and you're going to have to even deal with it more head on as the rest of Norristown State Hospital prepares to shut down.
Yeah, since the state has gone from this institutional programming, and I'm going to speak of this from a very 100,000-foot view, to really community-based housing, it has really strained not only the Norristown Police Department but other local police departments, because we're dealing with these people. We're dealing with patients who are now becoming defendants, and the tools of police officers is arrest. You know, and the tools of the judge is fines and lock them up. And if those are the only solutions that we have, that's not going to really be it's not going to help us be a safe community, but it's also not going to get to the root of the issue with respect to the defendant/patient that's in front of us.
And something else that we talked about, and I think is very important for people to understand, is that you don't set the rules. The local judges don't set the rules. It's done through the state legislature. I think people need to realize that, because I'm sure people get angry at you and think
all the
that,
time.
Yeah.
The biggest one is actually, you'd be surprised, we're going to take a quick turn here, but the biggest one is the parking rules. So when we have I do parking court, right? So when I'm in charge of that, I get everyone that yells at me, I have to redirect them to their local city council or their county or their township commissioners, because I don't set the parking rules.
Right.
Those people do. Yeah.
But you're right there in front of them.
I'm right there in front. Yeah.
So that leads me to, what is your most, I hate to use the word popular, but what kind of cases do you hear most? Is it parking? Is it landlord-tenant? What do you hear more than anything else?
You know, it's a very good question. So what I tell people all the time is that you want to know the health and vitality of any community you're moving to. Go take a look and sit down for a day or two at your local district court, because you'll really get a microcosm of the community, and you get a chance to see what the pulse of the community, what's going on. So right now, one of the things that's running rampant in my court are folks that are addicted to opioids and heroin, and I'm seeing that not only in my criminal docket, but I'm also seeing it in my civil docket. It's now getting transferred over into some of my summary cases as well. And these are folks that are committing not necessarily drug possession, but it could show up in cases like retail theft. You're stealing a lot, or persistent disorderly conducts, other ways. But the root issue is really their addiction to opioids and heroin. And I'm really thankful that I'm a part of a pilot program in Montgomery County called TOPS, which is a targeted opioid program. And that program helps people who their root issue is heroin and/or opioid abuse, and we get them evaluated to make sure that, one, there really is a drug problem, and two, that they really want the help. They're not trying to get out of the consequence. And then once we get through that evaluation, we generally will place them in inpatient treatment at a bed at a rehab, and they're not allowed to leave, and if they leave, they'll get arrested and go back to the criminal proceeding. And then after their treatment, whether it's 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days, or however long the treatment provider believe they need, then they'll come and they'll handle their criminal issue, and they'll check in with the courts periodically. Some people have to do it twice a day, some people once a week or once a month. And then at the end of the program, which would outlast the conviction generally, because it's about 18 months, they have the ability to have the charges dismissed and their record expunged, which is a great reward not only for the person but the community, because we're not locking that person up. We're not paying for prison costs for them. We're paying, yes, for the rehab, but ultimately if this person comes out the other end and they're a productive citizen, they're not going to recidivize, they're not going to commit further crimes, and their drug addiction is going to be tampered. That person is a father or a mother to a child. That person's being able to be a healthy parent to their healthy child and son, and that becoming a productive citizen costs the community way more than incarcerating them.
Right, and that's a state program?
It's a county program that we're doing. It's a pilot program.
Oh, that's excellent. How many cases do you hear a day? Is it every day? Are you in court every single day?
Yeah, so I hold court every day. I'm in the office, and it varies. So this morning I had court, and I had 21 preliminary hearings from 8:30 a.m. until I left the bench at 12:45 to run over here to get here. So most of those are agreements, of course, generally. But yep, it can vary. Then I'll leave here and I'll go back, and I probably will be done hearing cases around 4:30 and leave the office around 7.
Yeah, that's a long day.
It's a long day. It's
and
rewarding, though.
3 district judges just in Norristown alone, right?
Correct. In Montgomery County, we have 30 magisterial district judges. We have 3 in Norristown, and we also have common pleas judges, which is after you've gone through the magisterial district courts. I mean, you want to appeal, or your criminal case goes up, you go to the common pleas, and we have 23 of those. And Montgomery County actually just got allocated by the legislature for 1 more additional common pleas judge. So next year, the complement will be 24. So we'll have 30 magisterial district judges, 24 common pleas judges that serve Montgomery County.
So you're Norristown born and raised, is that right?
Born and raised in Norristown, went to Norristown Public Schools. I went to Cole Manor, Gottwald, Eisenhower. Ultimately, I did graduate from Renaissance, but proud of my Norristown background, my lineage. I come to some of the basketball games and football games.
So, and basketball team's doing really well.
They're doing really well. I just ordered my Norristown basketball sweatshirt online for their fundraiser.
Oh, very nice. So this might be a little awkward, and I don't know how you handle this. Being Norristown born and raised, you might see some old friends from high school or some kids you grew up with. How do you handle that? Do you have to pass them along to another judge?
You know, it's a very good question. So there are people who you know in passing, and then there are people who you really know. And so the recusal process and the court system is really left up to the discretion of the judge. So the judge has to make a decision about whether or not they feel they're going to be impartial or not, if they can be. And if there is a relationship there, they'll disclose it and they'll ask for input from both sides. But generally, I haven't really had that issue per se. The folks that I do know, we will work it out. If I have a relationship with them, I'll disclose it and then we'll move on. But none of my friends so far have been in front of me, and I've heard their case. So that's so far so good.
Well, that means you just picked the right friends.
That's right, hopefully.
Or, you know, your high school bully could come up in front of you, and you know, you could take that chance to. No, you shouldn't. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't.
No,
do that.
I wouldn't
know that.
do that.
You wouldn't do that. Well, you talked about the TOPS program. You have a senior fair coming up. What's that all about?
Absolutely. So we have you'd be surprised, or I was surprised rather, I'm working on my I statements, at how many seniors and grandparents are raising their grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And so I put together a program to really help them with resources, making sure that they have the latest regulations and rules with respect to Medicare. Just rolled out a new ID card. I don't know if you know about that. There's also programs and resources to help their children or their grandchildren if they are addicted to drugs and or alcohol. I've got treatment programs for that. SEPTA is going to come out and make sure they have senior IDs, which allows them to ride SEPTA for free. We're going to do a big presentation on their rights, wills, making sure you have a power of attorney, all of those things. And so I've seen a lot of grandparents over the past 4 years coming through my court for various issues, and I just want to make sure they have the tools that they need to be great citizens.
So when is this? When's the fair?
It's going to take place on Friday, February 22nd from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's going to take place at the Montgomery County Senior Adult Activity Center, which is at George and Erie Street in Norristown. We're going to have free lunch, free vendors. Everything's completely free. Just come, show up, have lunch with us, and we'll give you all this information, and you'll leave a better informed citizen.
Now, is this something a district judge would normally be involved in? How did you get involved in, and was this part of your creation? How did this come about?
So I have always been a person, as I told you, you look at a person's docket and it tells you the microcosm, because our docket is based upon jurisdiction. Unlike other judges in the judicial system, where their jurisdiction is based on subject matter, I have a location. Mm-hmm. So anything that happens in my district comes to me before it goes anywhere else. So I'm able to get a pulse on really what's going on. Throughout the past 4 years, like I said, I've seen seniors come in with different problems, and I said one of the ways, instead of them getting in a criminal or a summary offense where they can't change their roof, we'll have roofers there, or giving them the tools that they need, that way they can settle it before they come to me. So try and keep people out of the court system, whether it's civil claims, whether it's criminal claims, but it's better to get that stuff done outside of my outside of my office, versus have them be a problem. So I think that you're going to see, if this is as effective as I like, you're going to see this spawn off in other ways as well. I'm trying to think outside of the box, Stan.
And, well, I noticed you said earlier that you have roofers will be there. Who are some other people that will have?
Well, I shouldn't say roofers, but there's a program that if you are over a certain age and live in a certain area, there's a grant that you can get to apply for funds to get your roof fixed. So it won't be necessarily a roofer, but there's a roofing program that we'll have there.
What other things might be interesting to look at?
Sure. We're going to have the Triad Program is going to be there. They help seniors with scams. The Attorney General's office is going to be there. They're going to go over the do's and don'ts for looking into contractors. We're going to have them fix something. You're going to have we're going to have legal people there, legal providers there, to go over a power of attorneys, healthcare directives. there's going to be a wide array of folks. Rent rebates, we're also going to have somebody there talking about that, how to get money to the rent rebates and stuff.
And this is not just for your...
No, it's open to everyone.
It's open to
everyone can come. Yep.
And what's the date again?
It's going to be Friday, February 22nd from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at 536 George Street. And if you have any questions, you can always call my office at 610-945-9156.
Excellent. That sounded like a commercial to me. So you've been around, like we've talked about earlier, you've been around a long time. You're Norristown born and raised. What are some of your pet projects? What do you like to do when you're not, it sounds like you're sitting on the bench quite a bit, but when you're not, what do you like to do in the community?
So I just became the truancy judge this year, which is really great. And I generally hold my truancy hearings in the evenings. It's because I believe that kids should be in school. And so I don't hold them during the day for that very reason. I make it more accessible. So that generally happens one week a night, and they're probably from 3:30 till about 7 o'clock. So generally one night a week of that. I'm very active in my church. I do missions work with my church, so I travel to South Africa, generally 1 to 2 times a year, doing rebuilding homes, building schools, healthcare clinics. I do that, and I'm also a member of our local fire department, the Norristown Fire Department, so I will stop by the firehouse every once in a while. It's a great way to get involved in your community. Anyone looking to advance in public service, it's a great way to start. If you're looking to be a doctor or a nurse and you're in high school, I always tell people, go join your local ambulance company. You'll get free training. You'll be able to provide health care to people, and you'll be able to see if you really like it. And you don't have to do anything but show up. Right. You know, so those are great things, and I'm all involved in those things.
Yeah, we just had the big fire out at Salters out in Lower Providence.
Oh my gosh, the ski shop, yeah.
What would we do without our volunteers? I mean, you know, this was such a massive fire that they needed, you know, all hands on deck. Obviously, but there were fire trucks from all over the county. Yeah. Even I think there were some from Chester County as well.
I think there were 30-something trucks on scene, if I can recall correctly. But you're absolutely right. And the fire service in Montgomery County is ever evolving. We need more volunteers. So if you want to get involved, you can go to norristownfire.org, or wherever you live. There's a local fire department. Hit them up. Figure it out. There's generally a time commitment of once a week, one night per week, where you go in for training, and they're going to provide you all the training and skills that you need to get involved. But if you know someone that's interested, that's definitely great. If you want to do military service later on, also a great thing to put on your resume as well.
Yeah, it's almost like, to me, it's almost like a military position as a volunteer, and I think we need to thank them as often as we possibly can as well.
And that's another thing, you know, if you have a fire in your community, the best thing to do is show up with a couple bottles of water, maybe a few donuts or something while those folks are out there to help them replenish and get nourished. But also a big thing we need is we need folks to get involved. And there's a common myth that you have to be a guy to be a firefighter. And let me tell you, I've seen some really great women who are great firefighters as well. So you don't necessarily have to be a guy. We're going to dispel that myth today. But if you want to join, just show up at your local fire department. I'm sure they'd be glad to have you.
That's great stuff. Well, like I think I said earlier, that I met you first. You were a student representative for Norristown Council. Kind of even, I thought back then, I thought, oh, this guy's going to be mayor one day. You know, and then they got rid of the mayor's position, but that's a whole nother show.
Yeah, that's a whole nother show. We had to talk about earlier.
What steered you toward being a district judge? What made you think to yourself, you know what, that's the career I want to go into. I want to go into this line of work.
It's very interesting. So when I first considered it, I had a relative who had gotten incarcerated, wrongfully incarcerated, and had received, was charged with numerous felonies and numerous misdemeanors. And I was livid. I was pissed, to be honest with you, and I looked into it and I tried to figure out, how can I help this system be better? How can I change rules? Or I was in the business of making laws at that time, or helping construct laws with members of Congress and the legislature. So it's like, as this law changes, rule changes, and then I said, well, let me be a voice. And I think one of the things that people talk about generally is how I'm the first African American district judge in Montgomery County, which to me isn't really it is an important thing, but I think the biggest highlight for me is the socioeconomic status. I'm probably one of the poorest judges, so I think having a diverse group of judges is way more important than anything else. So, and diversity in terms of everything, not just race, but everything. Women, men, you know, we need LGBT, everything. Having all these people in a room to help make decisions makes people better. I'm a key component of diversity makes the system better, and it's about making sure that you have it can be helpful knowing when you know where people come from and their struggles, and that I think my diversity and my struggle is also different, and it helps me become a better judge. So I say through adversity I became more inclined to do it, but I also had really great friends in Judge Hunsaker and Judge Lawrence growing up. So I was aware of it, but it really wasn't too detailed until my relative got incarcerated. Then I really engulfed myself in the process. And I said the best thing that I could do was to become a part of the system and help share my story and help bring a different viewpoint to the situation.
So that leads me to someone off camera said earlier that you'd heard a rumor that you were running for Congress. And you wanted to dispel that myth or that rumor that maybe popped up somewhere?
I don't know who said that. I'm not running for Congress. I am a magisterial district judge. I've been here for 4 years. I've got two more years left on this term, and I plan to keep doing this job as long as the people will have me. I really enjoy my job. I really do.
That's where I was going to lead to. Is this something that you want to do for the rest of your life, or do you see yourself wanting to go up to common pleas? You know, what is your aspiration as far as the legal system goes?
Yeah, you know, I believe that God has me right where He needs me right now, and I'm just so happy to be of service where I'm at. I love what I do every single day, and I don't anticipate any of that changing anytime soon, and I'm looking forward to being here as long as He would have me and the people vote for me.
Excellent. You mentioned Veterans Court a little earlier, too. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that, or tell our audience a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So we have in Montgomery County, we are literally on the cutting edge of helping people with treatment programs. So we have a Veterans Court program. We have a behavioral health court program. We have a drug court program. We also have TOPS. We also have a mortgage diversionary program. So in Veterans Court, if you are a veteran, if you've served or currently are serving in the armed forces, you could be eligible for our Veterans Court. If you're incarcerated or you got arrested on criminal offenses, you could be eligible for that program. And essentially what they do is they help make sure that you get through the criminal process, that you have people alongside of you in that process, that if there's any underlying mental health or mental illness or drug and or alcohol or any other issues related to your veteran service or your military service, they help sort that all out, and you go in front of a Veterans Court judge, and they work through that whole system. Same way with our drug and alcohol, our drug court. If you have a drug or alcohol problem, Judge O'Neill oversees that court, and it helps people that are in the midst of their drug addiction, that are committing criminal offenses. It'll help them get treatment for that drug addiction, get them clean and sober, and hopefully graduate from that program, get a clean record, and then ultimately get their record expunged. Behavioral health court is the same thing. I talked about how we're incarcerating our mentally ill at an alarming rate. If you have mental illness in Montgomery County, you're eligible for our behavioral health court program, which makes sure that you are treated with the appropriate level of service that you need to understand the criminal proceedings, but then also make sure that you're getting the treatment as well. We have so many people that are suffering from depression, anxiety, PTSD, and various other mental illnesses that need to get the real treatment for those programs. So that court helps people who have those illnesses or who believe they have those illnesses get that treatment, but also be held accountable at the level that's appropriate for them as well.
So you mentioned something earlier about that you have your truancy court in the evenings. Mm-hmm. And obviously a great idea. You don't want them out of school when they, you know.
Right. But not only the kids out of school, but the parents. So we have a lot of these kids have parents who work 2, 3 jobs. On average, the kids that come in front of me, their parents are working 2 and 3 jobs.
So where I was going with that is you know, local police officers, they're doing a lot more with community outreach, and they're doing the coffee with a cop and things like that, and trying to become obviously more personable, because you want people to trust in our local police officers. And I guess the same would hold true for you as well. How do you approach a child, teen, who probably doesn't want to be in front of you? Is it a formal courtroom setting, your truancy court? Is it formal? Do they come in? And
It's a regular, same way. If you come in on murder charges, or the same, you're treated the same. You're in the same courtroom. You have the potential for incarceration. There's a potential for fines. We can take away your driver's license. It's a court that has a lot of impact, has a lot of, the judge, me in this case, has a lot of discretion in terms of what we can do. And we take it very seriously. I'm happy to report that in my short time doing truancy, I just started this year, from my first to second set of hearings, we had roughly 80 to 90% of the kids in school. We had some students who were in school but really weren't doing the work, and we're trying to work around making sure they get the supports that they need. But yeah, it's been challenging. The school district hasn't been the best partner, but we're working on that.
How do you improve those numbers? How do you get kids in school, I guess? Is that some kind of role that you would see, not necessarily just your courtroom, but you taking on? I mean, obviously that's...
So the issue is that most of the people, most of the children that come to, most of the kids that come, or the students that come to my courtroom for truancy aren't like, oh, I don't want to come to school. Most of them, there's a root issue. There could be bullying. There could be domestic violence at home. There could be abuse at home. There could be a special education issue. So we get to the root of the issue, help them get connected with services, and then generally they do show up for school after that.
Right. I think it's such an important issue. Just it can cut off so many things. That it just get them in school, make sure they're in school, make sure they're learning, can cut them off from doing so many bad things maybe later down the road.
Stan, you're absolutely right. I mean, the studies show that if you don't, majority of people that come in my courtroom don't have a high school diploma in criminal proceedings. If I can get that kid to show up for school, show up, do his work, get a high school diploma, the chances of that kid getting arrested or showing up in my courtroom in criminal proceedings later on is dramatically cut in half.
Excellent. Well, thank you for showing up today.
Thank you.
I think we've run out of time. I want to thank you guys for tuning in today, and I'll sign off with one of my favorites from Hank Cisco. Keep bobbing and weaving, everyone.